There are some people who would try to claim that actually living inside of a tabletop RPG would not be a very enjoyable experience. You would essentially find yourself in an alien and unfamiliar environment full of strange smells and sounds and creatures that don't share your language and who might turn hostile without any warning whatsoever. But I work in a high school, so I call that Slow Tuesday. I'm down. Today, I want to talk about the new April Fool's Day release by Roll for Combat called Battlezoo Otherworlders on today's episode of The Local Disaster Tour Guide. Happy April Fools, travelers and tourists. My name is Mark, and I am the local disaster tour guide. That's right, I am a storyteller that's not from around here. Welcome to a journey through the fantastic world of TTRPGs like Pathfinder and Starfinder, and welcome to a special episode where I'm going to be discussing the latest product being offered by the incredible team over at Roll for Combat. A PDF that allows you to play a character from Earth that has been teleported into a tabletop RPG scenario, and yes, you can totally play yourself. So I guess that means we're finally being honest about the blatant wish fulfillment of the hobby. Last year for April Fool's Day, Roll for Combat released Battlezoo Ancestry's Dungeons, allowing you to play the avatar of a dungeon, and that was easily one of the most hilarious things I have ever seen. And I even did a video specifically covering that product because of how amazing it was. I'll throw a link up if you want to go check that product out. Well, this year for April Fool's Day, Roll for Combat has dropped another completely free PDF that you can use to play people from Earth who find themselves living in a world populated with elves and dwarves and an even larger number of mimics. It's April Fool's Day. I mean, seriously, they're everywhere today. Battlezoo Otherworlders has been written by Mark Seifter and is available for Pathfinder 2nd Edition and D&D 5e. It's available for free, and I'll be throwing some links in the video description if you want to go and check these products out. Today we're going to be talking specifically about how Battlezoo Otherworlders works in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, but this is also completely applicable to D&D 5e, so regardless of which game you're playing, you can make use of this product, and I think it's a ton of fun. Now, before I dive in, I do want to acknowledge a small point of controversy that may surround this video. I do realize that I am supposed to be on vacation from my channel right now, and that I wasn't supposed to be posting any videos on this channel until sometime after the Easter holiday, and that is true. The reality is that Stephen Glicker and Mark Seifter burst into my life utterly without warning and shocked me with the news of this forthcoming April Fool's Day product, and then aggressively coerced me into covering this product for them, and I fought as hard as I could to resist them, but ultimately I did end up surrendering and agreeing to do this video. What I'm saying is, thank you, Stephen and Mark. This product is hilarious, I love it, and I'm glad I get to talk about it. Okay, so we've already hit the basic premise of Battlezoo Otherworlders. The idea is you are playing a character from Earth who has somehow found their way into the world of a tabletop RPG. Exactly how meta you want the commentary of this character to be is going to be up to you. The PDF that Roll for Combat has provided on this subject scales from the very serious you are lost in another world, trapped in another world style concept, to the very slapstick, absurd wish fulfillment dreams that this premise is obviously poking some fun at. But one of the big questions is, how do you do it? How do you make a character from another world in a tabletop RPG like Pathfinder? And the approach that Mark Seifter and Roll for Combat uses, I think, is actually a pretty creative and wonderful way to do this. They do it through the use of rare backgrounds. In Pathfinder 2e, we're used to the ABCs of character creation: ancestry, background, and class. And in this particular instance, Mark Seifter has opted to focus on background, which is the often kind of brushed over aspect of character creation in Pathfinder 2e. Background is the least mechanically significant in a lot of ways, and tends to be one of those choices that's easy to overlook. But in this case, Mark has actually provided some pretty interesting background options and integrated them into the game in a way that feels balanced, mostly, and also very creative and interesting. The cool part about this is, because this aspect of your character that you are from Earth is your background, that leaves you with the full access to the ancestry and class options inside of Pathfinder 2e. Sure, I may be a human on Earth, as far as most people know, but in being teleported to Golarion, who's to say that the magic that might bring me there wouldn't cause me to appear in a slightly different form, allowing me to be an elf or a kitsune or whatever might be particularly engaging to the wishes that I have as a person. It also leaves wide open the full selection of classes in the game, rather than trying to pin every interplanar traveler as being part of a narrow set of class options or choices. By using the background, Mark Seifter leaves the rest of Pathfinder 2e wide open, so that if you want to use this concept, you can really wrap the full breadth of the game into the character that you're portraying, and it is a lot of fun. These backgrounds are the Otherworldly Inventor, the Otherworldly Reincarnator, and the Otherworldly Summon. Now we'll dive into the specifics here in a moment, but for the most part, these are going to work like you would expect backgrounds to work in Pathfinder 2e. Now they are rare backgrounds, so they're going to have some unique options, but for the most part, they're going to fill out the things you expect them to fill out in the game. Let's talk about them individually. First up is Otherworldly Inventor. The idea behind this background is that you have built or created something, or maybe discovered something, that has allowed you to travel from one world to the other. This gives you access and insight into technology that might be considered alien both on Earth and in the game world, and allows you to push the crafting skill in some unique and interesting ways. The background itself is going to give you 2 ability boosts. One of them must be spent on intelligence, and the other is a free ability boost like normal. You'll be trained in the crafting skill as well as the Otherworld lore skill. We'll talk about that more in a moment. And then you'll be given access to the Inventor skill feat, along with a few modifications about how the Inventor skill feat works inside of the game, representing the fact that your character is combining aspects of both worlds in the things that they create. Now, the unique part of every background is a new feature called Otherworldly Cheats, which are essentially superpowers that otherworldly characters might possess. There are not strict rules about how many otherworldly powers a given character is supposed to have, though this PDF does seem to assume a baseline of 2 otherworldly powers per otherworldly character. That's not set in stone. For the Otherworldly Inventor, it's going to come with a pair of recommended but not mandated otherworldly powers, which are Otherworldly Linguistics and Otherworldly Prosperity. The next background is called Otherworldly Reincarnator, and the idea behind this background is that your character died on Earth and then was reborn as a full-fledged member of the society inside of whatever game they're landing in. In particular, the PDF kind of recommends that your character may have died a heroic death on Earth, and that action, for one reason or another, led to your reincarnation, though it's not strictly required. But essentially, your old life is over, and a new life begins, allowing you to grow up inside of the game world. You can almost look at Otherworldly Reincarnator as sort of a modification for the standard backgrounds inside of Pathfinder 2nd Edition, because essentially what you do is you take any other normal background from the game. It can be common, uncommon, or rare, just not otherworldly. You take any other normal background and then you kind of apply Otherworldly Reincarnator over top of it. So you could be a scholar or a merchant or royalty, and you would gain the full benefits of those backgrounds, but on top of those benefits, you would have your memories from your past life represented through the Otherworld lore skill that we've mentioned before, and you would also have access to the cheat powers, again with the theoretical assumption that you probably start with 2 of them. The PDF does note that the Otherworldly Reincarnator is the background that is the most likely to have varied otherworldly powers, and is intended to kind of let you explore those powers a little bit more in depth. The final background, and definitely my favorite of the 3, is Otherworldly Summon. And this is basically, hello hero, sorry that we have called you away from your rest, but our world is in danger and we need you. Basically, someone or something just yanked you off of Earth and plopped you down in the middle of the story, and now you get to go deal with whatever the plot may require. It's dramatic, it's jarring, it's hilarious, and I think it probably plays into the particular tropes of this concept the most directly. But who doesn't want to be greeted as the hero literally everywhere they go? This background will give you 2 ability boosts as normal. One of the ability boosts must be the key ability for your class, and then the other ability boost is free. You will start the game with the Otherworld lore skill, and you will also gain training in another lore skill that is essentially related to whatever your real-world profession might be. You could almost consider this the day job lore skill. So for example, in real life, I work at a high school, so I might have the academia lore skill through this particular background. This background will give you a free general feat in the form of a choice between the toughness feat or the die hard feat, and you can pick whichever one you prefer. And this background is going to come with 2 suggested otherworldly or cheat powers. Like Otherworldly Inventor, Otherworldly Linguistics is one of your recommended options, and then for your second recommended option, since you are the hero, it is strongly recommended that your second power be directly related to your class in one fashion or another. For example, if your character uses the wizard class, you would probably have something like the spell mastery or spell power, otherworldly powers, to improve what you're able to do. Again, these recommended powers are not mandated. You can totally go with other options, but those are recommended because they are thematic to what the background is trying to portray. Okay, so now that we've covered the backgrounds, let's talk about some of the mechanical implications of playing an otherworldly character. What rules elements does Roll for Combat offer to help portray characters from another world? Well, the first and most obvious has already been mentioned 3 times, which is the Otherworld lore skill that each of the backgrounds we've discussed is going to give you. Otherworld lore is going to be a reflection of how well your character understands the lore, history, and culture of the world they came from. So in essence, it is a regular lore skill inside of Pathfinder 2nd Edition, though obviously very flavorful, not necessarily very useful. You're not on Earth anymore, so your understanding of Earth lore and culture is probably not going to be very useful in accomplishing anything in this new location where you have found yourself to be. Now, obviously, a skilled storyteller is going to find some ways to make use of the Otherworld lore skill for your character, and the entire time I was reading this PDF, I was honestly thinking of the Pathfinder 1st Edition adventure, Reign of Winter, so I don't think that the Otherworld lore skill is just completely out of the question. Still, the game does note that it's mostly intended as a flavorful option for your character. When it comes to actual in-game skills and in-game abilities, if your character is going to be good at something inside of the game, you're going to need the normal skill for whatever that action might be. For example, Earth medicine doesn't do me much good if I don't have access to the normal doctors and hospitals and pharmaceuticals that I might find here on Earth. As such, if I want to do any effective healing inside of Pathfinder 2e, my character needs to be trained in the medicine skill, because that is medicine as it is used inside of Golarion. So most of these skill actions in the game are going to remain completely unchanged. If you want to do something inside of the game, you're going to do it the normal way that any other character would. Otherworld lore is mostly there for fun and flavor. And as a result, playing an otherworldly character is not going to change a lot of the game rules themselves. In fact, the only other major game rule change is the Otherworldly Powers or Otherworldly Cheats that I have previously mentioned. These are essentially a list of different superpowers that your character has as a result of their otherworldly nature. Now, you can pick your powers from the ones that are listed, or your Game Master can assign your powers from the options that the PDF presents, and the PDF even gives you some random roll tables, allowing you to come up with some really wild variations of what your otherworldly powers might be. There are a couple of distinctions that you need to be aware of in discussing otherworldly powers. First, there are a couple of new proficiencies that otherworldly powers might offer. In Pathfinder 2e, we already have the well-established Trained Expert Master and Legendary proficiencies, and if you're familiar with the game, you know what those do. Otherworldly powers could potentially introduce proficiencies that go beyond TEML to include the Cheater and Bigger Cheater proficiency options. Yes, both of these are more powerful than Legendary, and if you end up with one of these, they could end up being a little bit game-breaking. So it should be obvious from the name that, yes, these superpowers can get a little ridiculous. The other thing to know about these superpowers is that each superpower comes in different ranks or tiers. These tiers start at the weakest F tier and then increase in power as a reflection of how much they modify the game. So you have the weakest F tier and then E tier, D tier, C tier, going all the way up to a double S tier rating. Now, F tier, E tier, and D tier, while they will impact your character and their abilities some, are not necessarily going to be game-breaking in nature. So characters who have F, E, or D tier powers are probably going to operate within the bounds of normal heroes in a Pathfinder 2e game, and can be included for the most part without a lot of modification. C tier, B tier, and A tier powers, respectively, are much more game-breaking in nature. And if these powers are included in a game, the Game Master will need to be prepared to include higher level threats, more serious monsters, because they are going to push what your character is able to do much farther than a normal character could go. Then you have the S and SS tier powers, which are absurd to the point of ridiculous. They are there mostly for the comedic aspect. I don't think these are intended to actually see play. They're just kind of there for fun. Every otherworldly power is going to have different tiers of effects, though it is worth noting not necessarily every power is going to have a unique power at every tier. So a given power may have an F tier and E tier option, nothing for D tier, and then pick back up again at C tier. Every power is going to be a little different in terms of what it does. Just be aware that every power has different options, and that those options scale as previously described. Let's talk about what is truly the most fun and entertaining portion of this entire PDF. Let's talk about the otherworldly or cheat powers. There are 25 different categories of powers listed. The first one is otherworldly analysis, which allows you to gather information about a creature at a glance. The base version of this power allows you to look at a creature as an action and essentially recall knowledge about the creature, though instead of using a normal lore skill, you're allowed to recall knowledge using your perception instead. As you go up to higher tiers, you may get a discount on the action cost, or you may receive more information, or if you get into the S or SS tiers, you may essentially become omniscient, at which point the Game Master should just hand you the books for the adventure path that you're running so that you can read them ahead of time and know everything that you're supposed to be doing. The next otherworldly power is called Otherworldly Anti-Magic. It also starts at E tier and gives your character a status bonus on all saving throws against magic. When you move up to D tier, it gives you access to a unique ability called Corrode Magic, which allows you to essentially try to counteract a magical effect. This is a special 2-action activity, and the PDF gives you the full rules how to use it. As you climb up to higher and higher tiers, you'll be able to use the action faster, gain bonuses, and when you get into the higher tiers of this ability, you essentially get to counteract everything for free, making you functionally immune to almost any magic inside the game. The next superpower is called Otherworldly Armor Mastery. This will also start at E tier and give you access to some free armor proficiencies that will scale based on certain things inside of the game. As you move to higher tiers, you can gain additional proficiencies, your armor can become tougher, harder to destroy, maybe even indestructible, and along the way you may gain access to the cheater and bigger cheater proficiency options for your armor. Essentially, this is a wonderfully defensive superpower that is both passive and scales pretty nicely. The next otherworldly power is Otherworldly Charm. This starts at F tier and gives you a small circumstance bonus on particular social skill checks inside of the game. And as you level up, will give you access to the Charm spell as an innate spell, usable at certain intervals. The higher your tier, the more frequently you can use your innate Charm spell, the higher your circumstance bonus to skill checks is going to become, and if you get into the particularly ridiculous tiers of play, enemies might automatically fail their saves against your Charm spell, or the entire world might just be charmed by you and everybody just automatically likes you, no active use of the spell required. The next option is called Otherworldly Concealment. This one will also start at F tier and give you a circumstance bonus on stealth checks. You gain access to a unique ability called Fade, which allows you to gain concealment against multiple senses, not just normal senses like sight. As you move up the tiers of power, your circumstance bonus on stealth checks will increase, and your fade will become more and more effective, potentially allowing you to avoid things like magical detection. And at the most absurd tiers of play, you are so good at stealth that things just probably won't affect you, essentially giving you a flat chance to avoid almost anything. The next otherworldly power is a lot of fun. It's called Otherworldly Death, and it allows you to essentially attempt to just outright kill an opponent. Now, this ability is going to start at F tier and scale up, and it's going to come with a unique mechanic called a kill limit, which is essentially a number of hit points that a target can have that will determine whether or not you can effectively use this power on them, but you get a special 2-action activity where you target a creature and attempt to kill them. As you move up the tiers, you might be able to use this ability more quickly, you might be able to target more creatures, your kill limit, the number of hit points a creature can have, and still be effective, that's going to increase. And at a lot of tiers, there's going to be an effect where even if you can't necessarily outright kill a target, you can still do a respectable amount of negative energy damage, but if you're looking for a power that allows you to just strike creatures dead, that is exactly what this ability does. The next two superpowers are pretty easy to explain. They are Otherworldly Enhancement and Otherworldly Experience. Otherworldly Enhancement is going to give you some bonus ability boost that you can use during character creation, and Otherworldly Experience is going to allow you to gain experience faster than other characters inside the world. So essentially these allow you to either start more powerful or rapidly become more powerful than normal creatures in the game world around you. Probably my favorite otherworldly power in this entire PDF has to be the next one on our list, which is Otherworldly Gacha, also known as loot boxes. Your character just gets random loot boxes. At low tiers, it might be a single loot box where your character can receive an item out of thin air, and as you go to higher tiers, your character can repeatedly and rapidly pull multiple items out of thin air until they get something that they need. But essentially, Otherworldly Gacha is just loot boxes as a superpower. Mark Seifter, if you are watching this video, that was hilarious. I was laughing for a minute straight when I read it. Thank you for including this option. The next option is Otherworldly Imperviousness, which is another defensive superpower that your character can have. And essentially this is damage resistance. Starting out as an F tier power, you essentially have 1 point of physical damage resistance, And moving to the higher tiers, you will increase the amount of damage resistance and expand the damage resistance to cover multiple types of damage, all the way up to the SS tier power where you are immune to everything unless you decide you're not immune to something. Again, passive, simple, easy to use, but quite impressive. Now the next otherworldly power is one of the strongly recommended otherworldly powers, at least at the lower tiers and at least at character creation. This is Otherworldly Linguistics. This starts at F tier and essentially allows your character to begin with the common language in addition to whatever Earth languages you already know. I guess being able to speak Spanish doesn't do me much good if I am in Varisia. This will also allow you to learn new languages at a slightly accelerated rate, and as you move to higher tiers, it might give you a bonus suite of starting languages, or just simply allow you to speak with any intelligent creature that you meet, or speak with things in your environment, or even communicate across planes. I do absolutely love the SS tier version of Otherworldly Linguistics. Your words are so powerful that anything you say just becomes true. That is ridiculous. The next power is called Otherworldly Luck, and essentially what this does is allow you to gain and spend hero points a lot more frequently. This will start out as an F tier power and will essentially give you bonus hero points at certain points inside of the game. As you move to higher tiers, your ability to generate hero points will naturally increase. And as you move to higher tiers, you will also begin to mess around with the rules for fortune and misfortune inside of Pathfinder 2e. There's a little bit too much to really dive in deep here, but it allows you to play around with those mechanics, and it is a lot of fun. The PDF does note that in using the Otherworldly Luck power, you do need to take into consideration how generous the Game Master is in the hero points they naturally give out, because at tables where the GM gives out a lot of hero points, that is going to make Otherworldly Luck a little less impressive, and the Game Master is either going to need to scale this power appropriately, or might want to allow the character to pick something different instead. Another simple but impressive power option is the Otherworldly Martial Power option, which starts at F tier, and essentially what this does is it allows you to treat any 1 that you roll on a weapon damage dice as a roll of 2 instead. As you move up to higher tiers of martial power, you will essentially increase the amount of minimum damage that your weapon dice can roll, and at certain tiers, the minimum damage on your weapon dice is actually going to exceed the normal maximum damage that your weapon could actually do, until you eventually get to these superheroic tiers of power where you are essentially dealing unlimited damage, and yes, that's as absurd as it sounds. Again, passive, simple, easy to use, but impressive. For those of you looking to channel your inner Bruce Wayne, you can try out the Otherworldly Prosperity power, which is the superpower of being rich. Yep, this power starts at F tier, moves on up, and essentially at every tier is going to give you access to a lot more money. If you want your character to be absurdly wealthy and enjoy all the benefits of that wealth, then Otherworldly Prosperity is for you. The next superpower option is Otherworldly Regeneration, and this is exactly what it sounds like. You heal faster. At F tier and E tier, your character is going to recover hit points faster while resting, and then starting at D tier, you will recover a certain number of hit points every minute. Of course, as you move into the higher tiers, the amount of healing that this represents is naturally going to skyrocket pretty quickly, ultimately allowing you to recover from all sorts of dangerous conditions. Now, at lower tiers, this regeneration is going to function in a manner similar to a troll's regeneration, in that there are certain effects, maybe acid or fire, that can stop your regeneration, but at higher tiers of play, the means of stopping your supernatural healing have not been discovered. Up next, you have Otherworldly Sight, and this one's also pretty obvious. It's going to improve your character's ability to see things. At F tier, you get low light vision if you didn't have it already. At E tier, you get dark vision if you didn't have it already, and a possible proficiency bump to your perception. And as you move into the higher tiers of this ability, you will gain effects like see invisibility. You may gain access to things like the cheater or bigger cheater proficiency. And at the SS tier of Otherworldly Sight, you see everything. Everything. Otherworldly Speed is pretty easy to understand, though it is a bit mechanically complicated. This is essentially the superpower of being able to move fast. It starts at F tier as a status bonus to your speed. At E tier, it becomes an untyped bonus to your speed. And then that bonus to your speed will naturally increase as you move up the higher tiers. When you get to a certain point, you will gain access to an ability called Split Move, which allows you to break up your move action to different points inside of your turn, which I think is something that a lot of D&D 5e players would really enjoy seeing in Pathfinder 2e, because I know I've heard some complaints about how Pathfinder 2e occasionally handles movement. But if you've got to go fast, Otherworldly Speed is for you. The next 4 otherworldly powers all relate to spells in some fashion, and therefore are really only going to work with a spellcasting character. These are Spell Capacity, Spell Knowledge, Spell Mastery, and Spell Power. And each of these is going to interact with a different aspect of the spellcasting rules in Pathfinder 2e. Spell Capacity is going to increase the number of cantrips that you know, and as you move up higher tiers, give you access to more spell slots. Spell Knowledge is going to increase the number of spells that you know, and potentially can include in your spell repertoire if you have that class feature. Spell Mastery is going to interact with your spell attacks and spell DCs in some interesting ways, and is really good for multi-class spellcasters. I'm just going to throw that one out there. And Spell Power is going to be similar to the Martial Power that we discussed earlier, where essentially your spell damage dice have a higher minimum damage, that eventually that minimum damage can track so high that your minimum damage exceeds the normal maximum damage of your spells. Yes, that is hilarious. The next power is called Otherworldly Tenacity, and it might as well be called the Hard to Kill power. At F tier, it's going to give you some extra hit points, and the number of extra hit points will increase as you climb up the various tiers. And it's also going to interact with the dying condition, essentially raising the level of dying that your character needs to hit before you are truly dead. It will also make some of those dying rolls easier, and at the highest tiers of play, will essentially make you unkillable. Up next, you have Otherworldly Transformation, which starts at F tier and essentially allows you to modify your appearance in small ways, effectively allowing you to disguise yourself or impersonate other creatures a little more rapidly than might be normal. As you move up to E tier, you gain access to the Druid Wild Shape ability and the ability to use the Pest Form spell, and then as you move into tiers beyond that, you will gain access to some of the different battle forms that are associated with the polymorph spells in Pathfinder 2e. When you move into the superheroic versions of this ability, you can truly become different creatures, essentially shedding your old self, and at the highest tiers of power, you can essentially forcefully reincarnate yourself anytime you would die, becoming a new creature on each occasion. And then we have the final otherworldly power, which is Otherworldly Weapon Mastery, which at lower tiers is going to give you proficiency in various weapons, potentially all of the weapons in Pathfinder 2e, and then as you scale to higher tiers, is going to improve your proficiency, possibly to absurd levels, or even make it where your character automatically critically succeeds on every attack roll that they make. The SS tier version of Weapon Mastery is essentially, if you attack it, you automatically kill it. And with that, we have discussed all of the otherworldly powers that are offered to otherworldly characters through this fantastic product that Roll for Combat has offered. Again, I will be throwing some links to the Pathfinder 2e and D&D 5e versions of this PDF, which are available for free from Roll for Combat. You can check those out in the video description, and I highly encourage you to do so. Now, this product is very clearly an April Fool's Day product, and a lot of the content in this product is mostly there for you and I to laugh at, but I do enjoy the fact that especially the F tier, E tier, D tier options that Mark Seifter gives us are playable. You could drop this into a Pathfinder 2e game, and it would fit and it would work, and it wouldn't really disrupt the flow of the game. I really enjoy the fact that their April Fool's Day joke actually allows me more options and opportunities and ways to play this game. And I've got to say, Roll for Combat, as long as you keep putting out real game options as your April Fool's Day free content, allow me to say I will always be a fan, and I will gladly allow you to twist my arm into reviewing any future April Fool's Day products that you might send this way. But that's all I've got for you today, so if you've enjoyed this video, please remember to go over to Roll for Combat's website, check out the free PDFs, and before you go, if you've enjoyed this video, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. You can check out my free Discord and my Patreon. Both of those will be linked in the video description as well. And as always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being part of the conversation. Have a wonderful day.